Okay, so this is the second part about the reverse dysphoria. It will not make sense if you haven't watched the first part before watching this. So if you haven't, I'd highly suggest you go back and watch that one first. Link in the description if you're lazy. Done that? Alright. Then let's continue where I left off in the previous video. Then reverse dysphoria kind of falsely mirrors actual gender dysphoria. The big difference is that someone with reverse dysphoria doesn't wish to become something that he or she is not. The wish is simply to appear more clearly like what you already are. However, my own gender therapists, yes, 2 of them, do not understand that a detransitioned woman with reverse dysphoria already knows that she's a woman by default, regardless of if she looks like it or not. So, how does reverse dysphoria relate to gender identity? A woman with a beard and a deep voice is not suddenly a man, no matter how much she passes as male because of those physical features, and no matter how uncomfortable she may be with having them, and with being perpetually regarded as a man by others. Likewise, a woman with the same features, being comfortable and fine with having them, whom doesn't experience reverse dysphoria, is no less of a woman than the one who is dysphoric about those masculine features. They are both women on the basis of their biological sex. However, it may be so that a woman with reverse dysphoria may be more comfortable with seeing herself as a woman. Thus, being comfortable or uncomfortable with being female determine whether you are either a trans man or a cis woman. No, in my opinion it does not, and it is also not quite that simple. However, being either an ideological pawn with no dysphoria or having enough discomfort to call it dysphoria is often what creates the idea of one having a gender identity which either aligns with biological sex or strays from it. In simpler terms, according to genderists, having gender dysphoria is a sign that trans men are men and trans women are women. Not having dysphoria makes you cis. Having reverse dysphoria makes detransitioners legit. I do not see it that way. I think dysphoria is what makes trans people believe that they are or should be of the opposite sex, and that most cis people don't even understand what's supposed to feel like a gender, but also may experience different degrees of comfort or discomfort with their sex traits. Detransitioners often seem to end up somewhere in between those, or a mix of both the two. There is no clear line of who is or isn't trans. I'm sorry if I stepped on some toes there, but it is relevant when people then take that same mindset and toss it over to detransitioners. Whether we have dysphoria, whether we have reverse dysphoria, regular dysphoria or no dysphoria. Because we may not have that same kinda mindset. So, does that mean that reverse dysphoria is what makes detrans women believe that they are women? In my case, no. I know that I'm a woman simply because that is my biology. However, some detrans women with reverse dysphoria actually identify as women because of that. I've come across one who does that, or at least she said so. I do not personally consider myself having a gender identity. I just call it my personality, which is still an androgynous mess, last I checked. When I call myself a woman, it's not my personality that I label as female, it is only my sex. I do not want my personality called male or female or non-binary, I only want my body called what it fucking is. But here's how it gets tricky with gender clinics and therapists, at least in Sweden. In order for me to get reversal procedures financially covered and such, I have to go via the gender clinic and get their approval. But they operate under the same ideology that the trans community does. And I want to be absolutely clear when I say that for detransitioners in Sweden who wish to reverse their medical transitions and or legal sex markers, the requirement is to have reverse dysphoria and to see themselves as cisgender people who were misdiagnosed with gender dysphoria. I think that required a slightly more serious note. This is a problem, even for me who have reverse dysphoria and being sort of fine with calling myself a misdiagnosed cis woman. Like I can roll with that, because it's at least close to what I think went on with me. But it gets tricky because I cannot pretend that I have a female gender or feel like a woman, because that cis versus trans dichotomy is an ideological perspective that I can no longer believe in. And I'm on thin fucking ice when I tell my gender therapist that I think I'm already technically a woman, no matter how much hair is growing on my face or what pitch my voice is at. Because then they come at me asking, but then why do you wish to reverse your transition? And I don't think that. Because I feel like I'm a broken woman that's too fucking hard to deal with, would suffice for an answer. I believe that sort of system here might end up being a huge issue for many detransitioners, and not just myself. Even if most of them might only want to stop taking hormones and change back the legal sex marker, if they changed it in the first place, a lot of them probably won't be able to do the latter. Because I believe that most detransitioners do not experience reverse dysphoria. But that does not mean they should be dissuaded from detransitioning if that's what they know is right for themselves. Most seem much more likely to still struggle with the regular kind of dysphoria, meaning they are still dysphoric about their natural sex characteristics, but just realize that transitioning was not good or right for them. That transitioning could not make them into the opposite sex, and that they would rather try to accept their biological sex. That is a perspective that I do not have experience of myself, but I understand it from a gender critical viewpoint, and from my ability to rationalize common sense. It's not difficult for me to grasp that or to take it seriously, because ultimately I do have more in common with dysphoric detrans women, also if they're very gender non-conforming, than I do with the gender-obsessed crowd who compulsively decides for me what my experiences are and what they mean. Then what about regret? Is there such a thing as transition regret? And how does that relate with gender dysphoria? I think many detransitioners experience regret in some way or another, but that is not always due to reverse dysphoria. However, it can be. Regret can be extremely painful and mentally taxing, regardless of if it's due to reverse dysphoria or not. So I don't think it should be downplayed. You can regret it because it messed up your health, because it costed you a lot of money, because it simply doesn't feel worth it in the end, because it made you lose friends and family, because it didn't treat your dysphoria, and so on. Also, not every detransitioner regrets transitioning, which is of course also fine. If you're happy with your transition as it went, but still wish to detransition, that's also a way to do it. So what does it actually mean to detransition if the driving force is not getting reverse dysphoria and wanting to undo all of the changes of your medical transition? It's very individual and can be for a lot of reasons. For some it is to stop chasing the impossible dream of becoming the opposite sex. For some it is because transitioning didn't treat their dysphoria but only empty their bank accounts. Some realize they transitioned to attempt to fulfill a sexual fetish. For some it's because they wanted to escape being gay or lesbian and or gender non-conforming. Some realized it was trauma and self-harm that led them to transition. For some it's because they want to find healthier ways to treat their dysphoria instead. And some realized they never had dysphoria to begin with. There are many other reasons than that. No, and one person can have several different reasons. About half of all those things I've listed are aligned with my own experiences, and all of them I've heard from others. There is no single reason to want to detransition, and there is no one way to pursue detransition. Reverse dysphoria can happen, but it's just one of many ways to experience transition regret. And I believe all detrans experiences deserve to be heard and listened to, no matter if they experience dysphoria, no matter how or if they experience dysphoria, and also if they have very different experiences from myself. I'm against the genderist view of reverse dysphoria, despite experiencing that myself, because even though I do, their view of only portraying it as one option only experience is very limited, incorrect and harmful to detransitioners in general. It is a view of detransitioners that literally only benefits to people that are happily transitioning. I'm not against things benefiting transgender people, so long as it's not at the cost of detransitioners or any other demographic of people. So that's all I could reasonably think of saying about reverse dysphoria. If you have anything you'd like to add, questions, concerns, complaints, disrespectful support, disrespectful nonsense, death threats, or otherwise, just drop it in the comment field below and I will address it momentarily. I read all comments and reply to most of them, including the nasty ones, because that's fun. Until next time, I'll be back again when you least expect it. Bye!